The town of Medford experiences a terrible crime against a father. His daughter, Ellie, a twisted psychopath, Russell and her brother Gavin are all involved. When the truth about the case is revealed, it is sure to leave anyone who listens to it really saddened. The story begins with a 15-year-old Ellie who meets and connects with a 19-year-old medical school dropout from med school on social media. The two soon fall in love, but this is quickly discovered and her parents disapprove of it. She is a minor and should have no business hanging around a young man who obviously doesn't seem to want to do much with his life anyways. One day, after deceiving her folks at home and running off to be with Gavin, Ellie's father, Aaron Fryer, discovers this and goes to Gavin's home to sternly warn him. This begins the journey to the early loss of his life. The two lovebirds team up with Russell, a 22-year-old friend of Gavin, and together they all agree to eliminate the human obstacle to their love. Russell has what he refers to as a protective agency for teenagers. In his twisted mind, he believes that what they are about to do should be regarded as protective services for Ellie. They draw up plans and map out entry plans into the house and how to execute her father. Days later, the young men break into the house while Ellie is out at band practice. However, they find Aaron's girlfriend asleep and run off. This breaking in is not reported to the police by Aaron, but he begins to take some extra measures to protect his household and starts to keep a bat beside him. The next day, the evil duo return, and this time, Gavin sneaks into Ellie's room where they wait for Aaron to fall asleep. When he finally does, Gavin carries out his evil intention on Ellie's father. He uses the same bat which Aaron kept bedside, hitting him over and again after Ellie handed the bat to him. So terrible is the sight that he's wrapped in a blanket as they make to dispose of his now lifeless body. They put the body into his own car and drive it off to a pretty open spot before abandoning it there. Ellie also takes what is left in her father's wallet and goes off to buy hair dye as well as some meager supplies. They plan to escape to a different state soon and hopefully get married. It doesn't take too long for the late Aaron's body to be found, and the trio are soon arrested.
Did you happen to notice my wrists at all?
Your wrists? What about them?
Well,
stick one.
the
Well,
thing
good.
is that I can dislocate my wrist.
Okay, don't do that though, please.
Okay, you seem like a nice one. So
I appreciate it.
I won't make it hard on you.
All right.
Their friends and people who know them are shocked by this sheer display of evil. A number of Ellie's friends describe her as sweet and innocent.
She was really sweet. She was a really great person. So I was like, okay, I can be friends with this person.
She just seemed like a normal 15-year-old girl.
Ellie gets a female interrogator, Officer Smith, and although the officer appears to be friendly, the teenager is closed off and doesn't give her proper name when the officer asks.
Hi. Hello. Are you Ellie? No.
She declares her desire to have her attorney present. As the interrogation continues, her responses are short and filled with lies. Following some previous interrogations with her ex-friends, some of them say she had a penchant for lying.
I don't know, because Ellie has kind of lied to me before, which did hurt.
She tells the detective that she was a graduate and graduated with honors, but this is not true.
Do you go to school?
No.
No. What's the last grade you completed?
12.
You completed 12th grade? How old are you?
18.
Okay. All right. Where did you go to school?
South Medford High School.
When did you graduate?
Last year. Class of 2017. This year, sorry. Class of 2017. I graduated with an honors diploma.
That's exciting.
When the question of what happened on the day of her father's demise comes up, she rambles about being absent from home.
So what have you been up to today?
I haven't been home, and now I'm really concerned about what's been going on.
She even pretends not to be aware of her father's ill fate. In all, her answers are inconsistent and filled with loopholes.
So who was home when you left?
My sisters and my dad.
Okay.
Where's my dad now?
She identifies Gavin as just a friend and says she doesn't know his surname. She also lies about his name and says they dated for only 2 weeks.
What was that boyfriend's name?
Gavin.
Justin.
What's his last name?
Can't remember. I wasn't dating him for very long. Maybe 2 weeks.
This is because her parents were against the relationship and asked her to call it off.
Do you have a boyfriend?
My parents made us break up.
Oh, they did. Tell me about that.
They just didn't like him.
She also said her parents were strict and that her father was abusive and had emotionally and physically abused her in the presence of her 2 younger sisters. This is something that she later contradicts when she says the abuses happened in their presence.
My dad is very abusive.
In what way?
Verbally, emotionally. When I did something that he didn't like, he would grab me right here and he'd pin me against the wall.
Now what would happen?
And then my little sisters would freak out and then he'd stop.
In the end, she hardly gives up any relevant information, and her first session comes to an end as the detective leaves. The officer knows that Ellie is not giving her any reasonable answers. During Gavin's interview, he is taken to the room and left alone for hours while being watched by a police officer. Eventually, the detectives show up and his questioning begins. They tell him that his other friends Ellie and Russell are cooperating. They begin the questions by asking if he has a girlfriend who is expecting a child for him, and he answers in the affirmative.
There's some information that Ellie might be pregnant. Has she told you that? Okay.
This is an offense as Ellie is a minor, and his involvement with her already implicates him. Soon, they ask questions about the incident that happened to Aaron. From all indications, Ellie had painted a grim picture of her father for Gavin about the abuse she was experiencing at his hands, and this really angered him.
Her dad's an alcoholic, and he goes and she said that he's beaten her and locked her in the bathroom before and stuff.
Has she ever told you that anything in regards to?
That was just recently, and that's what set me off, so.
Okay.
Someone who knew him had described him as being very protective of the people he loved.
He was very protective of the people he cared about. Actually, how we met, I was bad-mouthing a couple people, not realizing that he was connected to those people. They had pissed me off, and for whatever reason, I just wanted to talk shit, and he gave me a black eye.
So it's quite easy to see why he must have been mad at Aaron for the alleged inappropriate assault that Ellie said her father had meted at her, even as a drunk. He says he never had the intention to take the man's life and breaks down in tears at this point. He says he did it to protect Ellie.
And that's what we're... Let me ask you this, Gavin, were you upset because of everything that Ellie had told you? Okay.
I didn't want to kill him.
Russell, on the other hand, has quite an interesting approach to his interrogation. For starters, he seems to have absolutely no idea how grievous their crime is, and even makes police jokes. He instructs the police to release Gavin so that Ellie's child will have a father when he is born.
Gavin is released so that when Ellie's kid is born, it can have a father.
While he might appear to be some cold-blooded evil genius, he actually has autism, and this may be the reason for his weird way of acting. It is important to state that Ellie had presented evidence of pregnancy to Gavin, and this may have triggered his resentment for her father, especially as she was now carrying his baby. Incidentally, it turns out that Ellie was never pregnant for him, and probably only used this lie to get her boyfriend to take out her father.
When she first got locked up, she was trying to tell everybody she was pregnant. She was not pregnant.
Although Gavin appears sorry for his crime, his past reveals that he had always had a tendency for violence. On more than one occasion, he punched and pushed people around.
We used to get together and play football or different things like that with a bunch of guys we knew. And a couple different times he ended up punching somebody, or I think he broke his nose at one point. And then a couple other times, sort of unprovoked, kind of fight somebody at our youth group. It was more of just a one or two thing, and then he would walk away. It's not like he was trying to kill somebody at that time, obviously.
An anonymous speaker even recalls Gavin pushing down his own mother, who was in a wheelchair.
One time, we were at my mom's house. I told him to come inside. He wouldn't listen to me. So he went outside, and because my mom's in a wheelchair, pushed my mom down the driveway, and my mom fell back and cracked her head open.
Oh my gosh.
Meanwhile, Ellie's interrogator returns to her to continue. Ellie resumes her dramatic acts, pretending to be unaware of most of the things being discussed. When she is confronted with lying about her name, she says it is a name that friends call her.
18 and your name is Ellie. Okay, maybe you go by Rain. Do you go by Rain?
Yes,
Okay.
Rain and Rose.
So your friend would know you as that. Like Russell goes by Mike?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Her session is a terrible attempt to draw sympathy from the detective, as she coughs every sip of the water before her. She also says she has not slept in 24 hours and is quite hazy about the incident of the fateful night.
Stephanie, I'm barely awake right now, and I barely have any recollection of what happened yesterday or within the 24 hours.
If she thinks she is fooling the detective with her acts, she is clearly wrong, as there are lots of holes in her convoluted account of what happened. Ellie is a really manipulative person, as she seeks every opportunity to paint her dad as an abuser.
He might have abused me for most of my life, but he's still my father.
Detective Smith is now done with Ellie's lies and pretense. She tells her that she is aware that Ellie has not been entirely truthful with her, and at this point wants the truth.
So what's the truth?
I don't remember. I'm so out of it.
Ellie decides to come clean and begins by saying that she had been a constant victim of her father's abuse.
My situation with my father abusing me had gotten worse, so I was looking for a way out.
And so she decided to leave the house with Gavin.
I started a plan to run away. So I started transporting all of my clothes to Gavin's house.
After some more beating around the bush, she admits that her father was fatally attacked. However, she tells her interrogator that he was attacked by Russell using a machete.
Russell attacked my father.
She also spins the entire attack around him and says she was not around when the attack happened.
I didn't see anything. Like I said, I was in the back room, and when I heard the whole thing going on, I jumped out the window and I ran.
Again, there are holes in her story, as some of her facts do not line up. For instance, she states that Russell disposed of her father,
I believe that Russell's the one that killed my father.
and in another breath, she mentions that they helped. Meanwhile, as Ellie continues to heap the blame on Russell, he is ordering whoever he thinks is listening to him to release Ellie to him. He also wants Gavin brought to him without any harm.
Gavin, Ellie, there.
Soon, he gets his chance to speak with the detectives, and he gives his account. He speaks from the perspective of trying to protect Ellie from her supposed abusive father. The cops try to establish premeditation in the heinous crime by asking if they ever discussed taking Aaron's life.
That the three of you guys have been having those conversations.
He responds by saying his plan was to cease Aaron and drive him off to the woods.
Put him in a car. Gavin would drive over state line to California. I was going to do...
You guys are going to tie him in the front seat of a passenger car with him alive and drive him across California?
Yeah, that was my idea. Okay. Killing was not my idea at all.
Here, they will tie the older man to a tree and severely reprimand him before driving off to California and abandoning him there. Russell seems to have a very distorted view of reality. He laughs at some point, obviously unaware of the gravity of their crimes. He also believes that smoking helps with his bipolar disorder, but there's no medical proof for this.
Bipolar, which I keep down with cigarettes.
He struggles with giving a definite answer to the definition of good and wrong, and believes that taking someone's life is not always all bad, especially if the person was hurting others. It is eventually discovered that Gavin also suffers from ADHD and autism.
He's autistic. He's always been very different than the children since he was little.
This means that his actions may have been somewhat connected to his conditions. Friends of his also said that he had a drug habit and always had hard drugs on him. At this point, with the knowledge of her involvement in the case, Ellie begins to distance herself from the crime as much as she can. However, Smith wants all of the truth and calls out Ellie over her lies, this time more confrontationally. She eventually admits to the role that Gavin played and that she pressured him into committing the crime.
Tell me how you forced Gavin into this.
I pressured him.
This is important because of the Miranda right, which holds suspects accountable for their words. However, it is quite obvious that she never shared any close relationship with her father. Although there might have been exaggerations to his abusive conduct, she doesn't make him out to be a great father. After the session is over, she is handcuffed and let out. It may never be clear why she conspired to take her father's life. It may have been a result of some mental challenges, as clearly demonstrated throughout her interrogation. It's also possible that she was really abused by her father. In the days that follow, she is tried in court. She has no remorseful words for her departed father. She also claims to have found God. In 2019, Ellie is found guilty of conspiracy to take her father's life. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison, with 10 of those years to be served in a juvenile facility. Russell was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for his role in the crime. Gavin was also found guilty of the significant role he played in ending Aaron's life and attempting to conceal the evidence connected with this. He is sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years. If you enjoyed this video and like to see more stories on true crime, then be sure to subscribe to our channel. This way, you'll be notified every single time we upload new videos. Thank you for watching.